Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on Chapter 50. When Princess Mary came down, Prince Vasily and his son were already in the drawing room, talking to the little princess and Mademoiselle Bourienne. When she entered with her heavy step, treading on her heels, the gentleman and Mademoiselle Bourienne rose, and the little princess, indicating her to the gentleman, said, "Voilà Marie." Princess Mary saw them all, and saw them in detail. She saw Prince Vasily's face, serious for an instant at the sight of her, but immediately smiling again, and the little princess, curiously noting the impression Marie produced on the visitors. And she saw Mademoiselle Bourienne with her ribbon and pretty face, and her unusually animated look, which was fixed on him. But him she could not see. She only saw something large, brilliant, and handsome moving toward her as she entered the room. Prince Vasily approached first, and she kissed the bold forehead that bent over her hand, and answered his questions by saying that, on the contrary, she remembered him quite well. Then Anatoly came up to her. She still could not see him. She only felt a soft hand taking hers firmly, and she touched with her lips a white forehead, over which was beautiful light brown hair smelling of pomade. When she looked up at him, she was struck by his beauty. Anatoly stood with his right thumb under the button of his uniform, his chest expanded, and his back drawn in, slightly swinging one foot, and, with his head a little bent, looked with beaming face at the princess, without speaking, and evidently not thinking about her at all. Anatoly was not quick-witted, nor ready or eloquent in conversation, but he had the faculty, so invaluable in society, of composure and impenetrability of self-possession. If a man lacking in self-confidence remains dumb on a first introduction and betrays a consciousness of the impropriety of such silence and an anxiety to find something to say, the effect is bad. But Anatoly was dumb, swung his foot, and smilingly examined the princess's hair. It was evident that he could not be silent in this way for a very long time. It was evident that he could be silent in this way for a very long time. If anyone finds this silence inconvenient, let him talk, but I don't want to, he seemed to say. Besides this, in his behavior to women, Anatoly had a manner which particularly inspires in them curiosity, awe, and even love, a supercilious consciousness of his own superiority. It was as if he said to them, I know you, but why should I bother about you? You'd be only too glad, of course." Perhaps he did not really think this when he met women, even probably he did not, for in general he thought very little, but his looks and manner gave that impression. The princess felt this, and as if wishing to show him that she did not even dare expect to interest him, she turned to his father. The conversation was general and animated, thanks to Princess Liza's voice and little downy lip that lifted over her white teeth. She met Prince Vasily with that youthful manner often employed by lively, chatty people, and consisting in the assumption that between the person they so address and themselves there are some semi-private, long-established jokes and amusing reminiscences, though no such reminiscences really exist, just as none existed in this case. Prince Vasily readily adopted her tone, and the little princess also drew Anatoly, whom she hardly knew, into these amusing recollections of things that had never occurred. Mademoiselle Bourienne also shared them, and even Princess Mary felt herself pleasantly made to share in these merry reminiscences. "Here at last we shall have the benefit of your company all to ourselves, dear prince," said the little princess, of course in French, to Prince Vasily. "It's not as at Anna Pavlovna's receptions where you always ran away. You remember cette chair, Annette? Ah, but you won't talk of politics like Annette, right? And our little tea table? Oh, yes. Why is it you were never at Annette's? The little princess asked Anatoly. Ah, I know, she said with a sly glance. Your brother Hippolyte told me about your goings-on. Ugh. And she shook her finger at him. I have even heard of your doings in Paris. And didn't Hippolyte tell you, asked Prince Vasily, turning to his son and seizing the little princess's arm, as if she would have to run away, and he just managed to catch her. Didn't he tell you how he himself was pining for the dear princess, and how she showed him the door? Oh, she is a pearl among women, princess, he added, turning to Princess Mary. When Paris was mentioned, Mademoiselle Bourienne, for her part, seized the opportunity of joining the general current of recollections. She took the liberty of inquiring whether it was long since Anatoly had left Paris, and how he had liked that city. Anatoly answered the Frenchwoman very readily, and looking at her with a smile, talked to her about her native land. When he saw the pretty little Bourienne, Anatoly came to the conclusion that he would not find Bald Hills dull either. Not bad at all, he thought, examining her. Not bad at all. That little companion. I hope she will bring her along with her when we're married. La petite Saint-Ile. The old prince dressed leisurely in his study, frowning and considering what he was to do. The coming of these visitors annoyed him. What are Prince Vasily and that son of his to me? Prince Vasily is a shallow braggart, and his son no doubt is a fine specimen, he grumbled to himself. What angered him was that the coming of these visitors revived in his mind an unsettled question he always tried to stifle, one about which he always deceived himself. The question was whether he could ever bring himself to part from his daughter and give her to a husband. The prince never directly asked himself that question, knowing beforehand that he would have to answer it justly, and justice clashed not only with his feelings, but with the very possibility of life. Life without Princess Mary, little as he seemed to value her, was unthinkable to him. And why should she marry, he thought. To be unhappy, for certain. There's Liza, married to Andrew. A better husband, one would think, could hardly be found nowadays. But is she contented with her lot? And who would marry Marie for love? Plain and awkward. They'll take her for her connections and wealth. Are there no women living unmarried, and even the happier for it? So thought Prince Bolkonsky while dressing. And yet the question he was always putting off demanded an immediate answer. Prince Vasily had brought his son with the evident intention of proposing, and today or tomorrow he would probably ask for an answer. His birth and position in society were not bad. Well, I've nothing against it, the prince said to himself, but he must be worthy of her, and that is what we shall see. That is what we shall see. That is what we shall see, he added aloud. He entered the drawing room with his usual alert step, glancing rapidly around the company. He noticed the change in the little princess's dress, Mademoiselle Bourienne's ribbon, Princess Mary's unbecoming coif, don't know how to pronounce that word, Mademoiselle Bourienne's and Anatoly's smiles, and the loneliness of his daughter amid the general conversation. Got herself up like a fool, he thought, looking irritably at her. She is shameless, and he ignores her. He went straight up to Prince Vasily. Well, how do you do? How do you do? Glad to see you. Friendship laughs at a distance, began Pierre Vasily in his usual rapid, self-confident, familiar tone. Here's my second son. Please love and befriend him. Prince Bolkonsky surveyed Anatoly. Fine young fellow, he said. Well, come and kiss me, and he offered his cheek. Anatoly kissed the old man, and looked at him with curiosity and perfect composure, waiting for a display of the eccentricities his father had told him to expect. Prince Bolkonsky sat down in his usual place in the corner of the sofa, and drawing up an armchair for Prince Vasily, pointed to it, and began questioning him about political affairs and news. He seemed to listen attentively to what Prince Vasily said, but kept glancing at Princess Mary. And so they are riding from Potsdam already, he said, repeating Prince Vasily's last words. Then rising, he suddenly went up to his daughter. Is it for visitors that you've got yourself up like that, huh? Said he. Fine, very fine. You've done up yourself and your hair in this new way for the visitors. And before the visitors, I tell you that in future you are never to dare change the way you dress without my consent. It was my fault, mon père, interceded the little princess with a blush. You must do as you please, said Prince Bolkonsky, bowing to his daughter-in-law, but she need not make a fool of herself. She's plain enough as it is. And he sat down again, paying no more attention to his daughter, who was reduced to tears. On the contrary, That coiffure suits the princess very well, said Prince Vasily. Now you, young prince, what's your name? Said Prince Bolkonsky, turning to Anatoly. Come here, let us talk and get acquainted. Now the fun begins, thought Anatoly, sitting down with a smile beside the old prince. Well, my dear boy, I've heard you've been educated abroad, not taught to read or write, by the deacon like your father and me. Now tell me, my dear boy, are you serving in the horse guards? Asked the old man, scrutinizing Anatoly closely and intently. No, I've been transferred to the line, said Anatoly, hardly able to restrain his laughter. Ah, that's a good thing. So, my dear boy, you wish to serve the Tsar and the country. It is wartime. Such a fine fellow must serve. Well, are you off to the front? No, Prince, our regiment has gone to the front, but I am attached. What is it I am attached to, Papa? Said Anatoly, turning to his father with a laugh. Ah, a splendid soldier, splendid. What am I attached to? Ha ha ha, laughed Prince Bolkonsky. And Anatoly still laughed louder. Suddenly, Prince Bolkonsky frowned. You may go, he said to Anatoly. Anatoly returned smiling to the ladies. And so you've had him educated abroad, Prince Vasily, haven't you? Said the old prince to Prince Vasily. I've done my best for him, and I can assure you the education there is much better than ours. Oh yes, everything is different nowadays, everything is changed. The lad's a fine fellow, a fine fellow. Well, come with me now. He took Prince Vasily's arm and led him to the study. As soon as they were alone together, Prince Vasily announced his hopes and wishes to the old prince. Well, do you think I shall prevent her, that I can't part from her? Said the old prince angrily. What an idea! I'm ready for it tomorrow. Only let me tell you, I want to know my son-in-law better. You know my principles, everything above board. I will ask her tomorrow in your presence. If she is willing, then she can stay on. He can stay, and I'll see. The old prince snorted. Let her marry. It's all the same to me, he screamed in the same piercing tone as when parting from his son. I will tell you frankly, said Prince Vasily in the tone of a crafty man, convinced of the futility of being cunning with so keen-sighted a companion. You know, you see right through people. Anatoly is no genius, but he is an honest, good-hearted lad, an excellent son or kinsman. All right, we'll see. As always happens when women lead lonely lives for any length of time without male society, on Anatoly's appearance, all three of the women of Prince Bolkonsky's household felt that their life had not been real until then. Their powers of reasoning, feeling, and observing immediately increased tenfold, and their life, which seemed to have been passed in darkness, was suddenly lit up by a new brightness, full of significance. Princess Mary grew quite unconscious of her face and coiffure. The handsome, open face of the man who might perhaps be her husband absorbed all her attention. He seemed to her kind, brave, determined, manly, and magnanimous. She felt convinced of that. Thousands of dreams of a future family life continually rose in her imagination. She drove them away and tried to conceal them. But am I not too cold with him? Thought the princess. I try to be reserved, because in the depths of my soul I feel too near him already. But then he cannot know what I think of him, and may imagine that I do not like him. And Princess Mary tried, but could not manage to be cordial to her new guest. Poor girl, she's devilishly ugly, thought Anatoly. Mademoiselle Bourienne, also roused to great excitement by Anatoly's arrival, thought in another way. Of course she, a handsome young woman without any definite position, without relations or even a country, did not intend to devote her life to serving Prince Bolkonsky, to reading aloud to him and being friends with Princess Mary. Mademoiselle Bourienne had long been waiting for a Russian prince who, able to appreciate at a glance her superiority to the plain, badly dressed, ungainly Russian princess, would fall in love with her and carry her off. Here at last was a Russian prince. Mademoiselle Bourienne knew a story, heard from an aunt but finished in her own way, which she liked to repeat to herself. It was the story of a girl who had been seduced, and to whom her poor mother appeared, and reproached her for yielding to a man without being married. Mademoiselle Bourienne was often touched to tears as in imagination she told this story to him, her seducer. And now he, a real Russian prince, had appeared. He would carry her away, and then sa pauvre mère would appear, and he would marry her. So her future shaped itself in Mademoiselle Bourienne's head at the very time she was talking to Anatoly about Paris. It was not calculation that guided her. She did not even for a moment consider what she should do. But all this had long been familiar to her, and now that Anatoly had appeared, it just grouped itself around him, and she wished and tried to please him as much as possible. The little princess, like an old war horse that hears the trumpet, unconsciously and quite forgetting her condition, prepared for the familiar gallop of coquetry, without any ulterior motive or any struggle, but with naive and light-hearted gaiety. Although in female society Anatoly usually assumed the role of a man tired of being run after by women, his vanity was flattered by the spectacle of his power over these three women. Besides that, he was beginning to feel for the pretty and provocative Mademoiselle Bourienne that passionate animal feeling which was apt to master him with great suddenness and prompt him to the coarsest and most reckless action. After tea, the company went into the sitting room, and Princess Mary was asked to play on the clavichord. Anatoly, laughing and in high spirits, came and leaned on his elbows, facing her and beside Mademoiselle Bourienne. Princess Mary felt his look with a painfully joyous emotion. Her favorite sonata bore her into a most intimately poetic world, and the look she felt upon her made that world still more poetic. But Anatoly's expression, though his eyes were fixed on her, referred not to her, but to the movements of Mademoiselle Bourienne's little foot, which he was then touching with his own under the clavichord. Mademoiselle Bourienne was also looking at Princess Mary, and in her lovely eyes there was a look of fearful joy and hope that was also new to the princess. "How she loves me," thought Princess Mary. "How happy I am now, and how happy I may be with such a friend and such a husband. Husband? Can that be possible?" she thought, not daring to look at his face, but still feeling his eyes gazing at her. In the evening, after supper, when all were about to retire, Anatoly kissed Princess Mary's hand. She did not know how she found the courage, but she looked straight into his handsome face as it came near to her short-sighted eyes. Turning from Princess Mary, he went up and kissed Mademoiselle Bourienne's hand. This was not etiquette, but then he did everything so simply and with such assurance. Mademoiselle Bourienne flushed and gave the princess a frightened look. "What delicacy," thought the princess. "Is it possible that Mademoiselle Bourienne thinks I could be jealous of her, and not value her pure affection and devotion to me?" She went up to her and kissed her warmly. Anatoly went up to kiss the little princess's hand. "No, no, no. When your father writes to tell me that you are behaving well, I will give you my hand to kiss. Not until then," she said. And smilingly raising a finger at him, she left the room. That concludes my reading of chapter 50 of War and Peace. I will now proceed to my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, Day 50. Justice Clashes. Sometimes an entire book, even one as sprawling and mammoth as War and Peace, can be reduced to a single sentence. We have a candidate for one such sentence today. It comes to us through the subjective experience of cranky old Prince Bolkonsky as he thinks to himself that justice clashes not only with his feelings, but with the very possibility of life. So that's it, readers. We can all go home now. We've learned everything Tolstoy wanted to teach us. Existence is tragic, justice is impossible, life is bleak. Actually, I'm going to stick around. And to be fair, the injustice of it all, while a major theme of War and Peace, isn't really the whole story. But it certainly is in today's chapter, if we take the Aristotelian notion of just deserts. The just mean between the vice of getting too much or too little of what one deserves, as our starting point of analysis. We can think of this method of analysis in honor of the character who gave us our starting point today, Prince Nicolaitan Ethics. Let's start with the old prince himself. Does he get a fair portion of what he deserves? Probably not. After all, once he was a great and celebrated general. Now he's an aging man living in the periphery of the Russian Empire. Soon, he'll be totally alone. His wife is already gone, his son is off at war, and now he must give away his daughter who he loves dearly. Granted, he expresses his love for her by means of a brutish nastiness, but even the most dull of readers understands that this nastiness is, tragically, merely the manifestation, however confused and hurtful, of his love for her. The old prince deserves someone to grow old with and die with. Now what about Mary? She wants a family of her own. Does she get what she wants? Not here. Instead, she gets the complete opposite, the scoundrel Anatoly. I mean, really, the concluding paragraphs of this chapter are just cruelty. There she is, Mary, playing her favorite clavichord sonata while romantically ruminating on the loveliness of her future marriage with Anatoly. Anatoly, meanwhile, plays footsie with Mademoiselle Bourienne right under Mary's clavichord. And Anatoly, nope, he gets too much of what he wants. What he wants is women, and in this chapter he gets 3 of them fawning over him. If things go according to plan, he'll get 2 of them forever. He'll take a rich wife in Mary and a French paramour in Mademoiselle Bourienne. This is not justice. Hesiod wrote that countless miseries roam among mankind, and the earth is full of evils. I think the poet Farmer gets it right, as any New York Mets fan can painfully attest. Because our experiential encounter with objective reality is so filled with injustice, then, it is incumbent upon us to act with justice within our own subjective reality. It's the least we can do. Daily meditation. Let there be freedom from perturbations with respect to the things that come from the external cause, and let there be justice in the things done by virtue of the internal cause. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. Alright, that concludes my reading of chapter 50 of War and Peace and my reflection on the same. Thanks so much for listening and enduring my horrible pronunciation of French and occasionally English. I hope you liked it. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation at PayPal. The links to all that are below. Tomorrow we will be reading chapter 51 of War and Peace. I really hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and of others.